creating a basic pivot table from a folder or the files within the folder that we're about to identify. I've created my blank workbook here and I've named it my pivot tables, so I'm all set up. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to come to my data ribbon tab. Over here in the get and transform data group, I'm going to click get data, and then I'm going to point to from file, and then over here I'm going to come down and choose from folder. Pretty simple. That's going to open up my browse dialog box here. I'm going to make sure that I've navigated over to my exercise folder, and then I'm going to select sales data. Not to be confused with the other folders, but that's the one I want to have, and then I'm going to click open. Now Excel will then look for what's ever inside that folder, and I can see here it's identified two separate text files, right? The extensions, the file extensions are text files. And there's two of them. One's named 2016, one's named 2017. Pretty simple. From here I'm going to click Transform Data. As I can see, this has now opened up my Power Query editor. Now, don't be confused or frightened of this at all. This is going to be real simple. We're going to do some basic steps in here. The first thing I want to do is I want to rename this from sales data. I'm going to just select everything and I'm going to call this transaction table. And you'll notice I capitalized the beginning of each word. And that's called camel casing. When I'm done, I'll press enter to accept that title or that name of this query. Over here it's going to show me a list of the queries. There's only one right now, and that's the name of it. We just gave it that. Next I want to look at what I'm seeing here. I can see there's a number of columns here. There's content, name, extension. That's all the file information regarding each individual file. I don't need all this other stuff, the folder path and stuff like that. I don't need that. I'm going to right click on content here. I'm going to right click on the header of that column, and then I'm going to choose remove other columns. Now I'm left with just that one because that's the content of each file. Now to see each of those, I'm going to click this little double pointed arrow here. It says combine files. Now it's going to give me a little preview here. I can move this around. It's a little window. It's going to show me the combined files, and this is everything that's going to be within the combined files. Then I click OK. Now I can see all the individual fields within the combined files. I'm going to narrow this down a little bit so I can see more of this. And then I'll narrow this one down a bit. Now, pretty simple. So I can see there's the transaction number, date time field, sales rep field, and so on. We're not going to need all of these fields within our pivot table. So what I want to do is I want to remove some of them. So I'm going to see that transaction number is already selected. I'm going to press and hold down my control key. And now that I've pressed and held down my control key, I'm going to click the column header of website, units, discount. And then I'm going to scroll to the right a little bit because I need to identify the other fields here. And then I'm going to press and control and then click price. So now I have these 5 different fields selected, as we can see here, and I want to remove them. I'm going to right click any one of the column headers here and then choose remove columns. Now it narrows it down for me to specify the specific fields that I want to have in my pivot table. From here I'm ready to load it to my Excel. So I'm going to come over on the home ribbon tab, I'm going to click the bottom half of this close and load, and then choose close and load to. That's going to open up my import data dialog box, as you can see here. Now what I want to do is I want to create a connection between that folder and this Excel file. So I'm going to choose right here, only create connection, and then I want to also add this to my data model. I'm going to click OK. Now there's nothing that has happened here in my Excel workbook, but I can see that my queries and connections task pane opens up here, and it's going to show me all of the queries that we've already created a moment ago. Next, what I'm going to do is I don't need this open, so I'm going to close this down, the queries and connections task pane. I'm going to close that. So now I want to build my pivot table while reflecting the data that we created a connection to within that folder. So I'm going to go to my insert ribbon tab. I'm going to come to my tables group, and I'm going to come up and click pivot table, but I'm going to click the bottom half of it. Let's see the difference. If I click the top half, it's going to open up this pivot table from table arrange. And and there's nothing in here. This is not what we want. We want to click the bottom half. And when we do, we can have some choices here. What we want to do is choose from data model. Remember, we added that last connection to the data model. So I'm going to click this. And then it says, okay, I know where the data model is. Where do you want to put your pivot table? And I'm going to say right there, it's just fine. Thank you. And click the OK button. Now I get my pivot table frame here. I'll zoom in a little bit. And then over here, I get my pivot table fields task pane, right? Right up here, it's going to show me the tables from which it's connected. I'm going to click right here anywhere on it, and it expands out the fields that are available. Now, before I start adding these fields to build out my pivot table, I want to rename this worksheet. So I'm going to double click here. I'm going to call this total sales. Now from here, I want to decide what kind of information do I want within my pivot table. And in this case, I want to have a report within that pivot table that shows me the net revenue. How much did each salesperson make? So what I want to do is I'm going to come up and I'm going to just click to place a check mark next to sales rep, and I can see that it applies that, it adds it to my rows. Next, I want to, of course, see the net revenue. When I click this checkbox, it adds it to my values. Why? Because that's a numerical field. However, I want to change this because if I look at my report here, it tells me sum of net revenue. I don't want that. I want it to say revenue. So I'm going to come over and click on the sum of net revenue here, and I just click it on one time, and then I'm click values. Now up here I can change this name. I'll just select everything to the left of it and press delete. Then I'm going to click number format because I don't want it just to have numbers. I want it to be accounting style. So I'm going to come up and click on accounting, and I'm going to remove the change or remove the decimal places. I'll click OK, and then I'll click OK again. Now that looks much better. From here, because I want to identify each salesperson, how much do they make by product in this case. So I'm going to come up and find the product, and now I want to click and drag this to columns. Now watch this. Look how it builds it out. I'll zoom out a little bit. There you go. So now I can see Al, how much did he make per product, and then also a grand total. Pretty simple. Again, this is a very basic pivot table built from a folder while creating a connection to that folder so that if we add more files with the same framework of data as a text file to that folder, we can come over and just click refresh, and it will update all of this information for me so I don't have to rebuild the whole thing. All right. Thanks for watching. I hope this helped, and we'll see you in the next exercise.